Kia ora koutou, Markie here in the mobile studio. I'm just going to lean back and get more comfortable. So as you can see, I'm at a nice viewpoint. So something for you to look at. The sun's about to set. It's probably may have already set actually. Camera always makes things look a bit lighter than they actually are. And I wanted to share some reflections. Now, for those of you that know the channel, I've been following my videos. You probably know that I've been moving into more anecdotal videos and sharing reflections and memories and experiences and stuff, because I've had some really I've been lucky, really been blessed to have a very interesting life. I've met lots of very interesting people and done lots of really interesting things, probably because I can't tolerate boredom. I've got ADHD, and boredom and me just don't get on. There's a little boat there, you can see the light on the boat there, just moving slowly from left to right. Well, moving quite rapidly actually, but it looks slow from here. So I don't know why. I do know why. I did a little randonautica. Gwendoline and I did a randonautica yesterday, and we didn't go very far, and we didn't go anywhere that was kind of special. And actually, it turned into a bit of a marker nautica, because the randonautica took us to a place that we couldn't really access. It kind of does that. It sort of takes you to somewhere in the middle of private land, or it points you to a place that's in the middle of private land that you can't actually get access to, or can't get legal public access to. So we did the randonautica, and then I kind of did Markie nautica, but only drove a very short distance away, and suddenly the landscape changed. And we were looking down over this amazing valley towards this hill, which was practically a mountain, probably not quite a mountain, but as good as, really, with lots of rocky crags and stuff like that. And there were some horses in the field that we said hello to, and then on the other side were some tiny, well, not tiny, but small calves, small bullocks, some of which were quite friendly and came over for a chat, and it just was a very inspiring place, really, and that's what we'd asked for, really, and it made me think about what we need as human beings. And we, obviously we need food for the body, and we need stimulation for the mind, but I think we need food for the soul as well, don't we? It's interesting, Gwendoline, she refers to her followers as the soul food family. And that soul food is a kind of a brand that she used for her channel and various things at one point. But it's not something I've been reflecting on recently, but it just came to mind, really, that we both, we both take a lot of pleasure from nature. We like animals, we like wildlife, and we could have planned a day, going to a known attraction, somewhere that everybody goes to, that's a popular beauty spot or something like that. But we had this place that was private. There was no one around. There were some houses nearby, but it just topped up the batteries of our souls. It fed our souls, and we both sort of felt the same way, really. And we were only there for probably about half an hour or something like that, and then moseyed on home. It wasn't too far away from home, and we went away enriched for that experience. And it made me think, and this is where it becomes a bit more anecdotal, I guess, of a place where I worked. How long ago? Oh God, 15 years ago. Oh, I dread to think how long ago it was. At least 15, probably more. And I worked in a part of Plymouth in the UK, in the West Country. So Plymouth is a famous place. It's where the Pilgrim Fathers sailed off from, and famous nautical centre, shipbuilding place. It's where the Polaris nuclear submarines are all based. Very interesting place. Lots going on there. It's kind of interesting because it's on the sea, but it's not a seasidey city, and it's a kind of it's a funny vibe to Plymouth. It's kind of, it does have a centre, but it doesn't really feel like it, and the reason for that is Plymouth was originally one town, and then there were other places nearby that grew at the same time, and they all, a bit like London. London was, when you go through on the London Underground, you go to all these, little stations and these little places. They most of those were actually little villages at one point or another, and then they all kind of grew together. Everything expanded. For example, Highgate Cemetery, which is a really interesting place. So this is one of the tangents that this channel is famous for. Highgate Cemetery was deliberately located to be way out of the city. But if you go there now, you realise it's surrounded by London. It's engulfed by Greater London. And that's happened with Plymouth. So Plymouth was, I think it was 3 kind of centres that merged into one being Plymouth itself, and another being Devonport. So Devonport is the bit that's on the Tamar estuary, and you look across to Cornwall on the other side of the estuary, and there's a ferry that goes across there as well, and lots of shipping, and of course you get the submarines. There's all around Plymouth and the coast there's little kind of old gun emplacements and forts, and so tons and tons of history, and of course Francis Drake, has got the association with Plymouth and the Spanish Armada and all that kind of thing. So I got this job in. So I lived in Devon, but not miles away from Plymouth, but I was always at least an hour away, sometimes a little bit more. And I ended up getting a job in Plymouth, actually in Devonport, which was the far side of Plymouth to me. So Devonport is the furthest extreme of Plymouth, really, because it's now part of Plymouth, looking out over the Hamodes, as it's called, the stretch of water, which is part of the Tamar estuary, and you're looking across to Cornwall in one direction. Plymouth's surrounded by water, and it's got some waterside places, but it's a bit like Bristol. Bristol is inland really, and it's on an estuary, but Bristol is a very nautical place, but not a seaside place. And Plymouth is, I find Plymouth a bit similar in its vibe to Bristol. It's quite an edgy place, so there's lots of gangs in Plymouth, there's lots of crime, but it's a real mix. It's a real mix, and people love it. A lot of people are really dedicated and diehard Plymouthians. But Devonport was a very weird part of Plymouth, and this particular part of Devonport that we were based in was apparently one of the poorest areas of the European Union, because of course Britain was in the European Union at that point. It was one of the most poor and rundown areas, but it's absolutely bizarre because you've got all around the naval dockyard, you've got these amazing, beautiful buildings. There's clock towers, and all the walls are very ornate, and then you've got kind of weird monumental buildings. So there's a library in Devonport, which is like huge. It's like a Greek temple. And it's kind of surrounded by grotty flats and, sort of 60s buildings. And there's a few other things like that. There's a lot of monuments. So I can't remember them all so well now, but there's like, things that look like Cleopatra's Needle, big obelisks. And there's a house that's all in Egyptian style and that kind of thing. It's a really amazing, beautiful stuff. And then right next to it, really rundown looking flats. There's a couple of high rises. So it would be a really good kind of landscape for some kind of dystopian sci-fi, not necessarily post-apocalypse, but a bit like The Prisoner, the series of Prisoner that they filmed in Port Merion, because they wanted a weird environment, a weird landscape. So it's like that. And one experience that I had was going to that little library. I'd say it was a little library. It's in this massive, colossal kind of Greek temple type building that dominates at the end of the road, surrounded by these, really rundown looking flats. But the library was like most of it seemed to be unused. The library took up a tiny section of it. And the first time I went to the library, I thought I'll go to the library lunchtime, see if I can order something. Because I used to, before the internet, I used to order get CDs and things from the library, and of course books, good old-fashioned books. And as I was walking towards this library in this this amazing opulent grand building, there's a small boy pissing in the doorway. And that was kind of typical. Is that every time if I went into a shop in that area, it seemed like always, it probably wasn't always, but quite often there'd be a gang of kids outside the shop asking me if I'd get them cigarettes or get them alcohol, which of course I didn't do. So that was the nature of the place. The other weird thing about it was that some of the streets, and I think a lot of it's been redeveloped now, actually, thank God, because it's a long time since I've been there. But some of the streets were really close to the water, but from certain angles you couldn't see the water, but you'd see a big ship come by, and you'd see it kind of like float by behind the buildings. It just looked really weird because it's like you're not expecting it. It's like a spaceship or something going by. But the place, it was run down, but with this weird mix of the opulent and the old and the grand and the beautiful and the ugly. And people were poor. And I used to, as I'm a big people watcher, I always used to say, that no one looked well. Nobody looked. It's funny, the other experience I had, I went to Bangor in Wales, and I went to a supermarket fairly late, late evening, probably about 8 o'clock. And everybody there in that supermarket looked really poor or really ill or both. Or they were kind of, really oddly dressed, or, they had some disability or something. And Devonport was like that at the time. And I remember saying, it's not just poverty of money, it's poverty of spirit. And in this case, I was sort of, so the word spirit is synonymous with soul. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because often where there's poverty, there's addictive behaviours and things like that. And often what's really interesting is people will develop a drug habit, which costs a fortune, and they'll fund the drug habit, and the drug habit will be, but it comes out of poverty. And there's lots of reasons for that, and we can look into that and go into that, but that's not really the topic of this video. But there is financial poverty. There's all kinds of poverty, aren't there? There's I can't think of any now that I've said that. There's financial poverty. I suppose there's health poverty, isn't there? There's health inequality. There's poverty of opportunity, that kind of thing. Often poverty of I don't know how to put it, but where there is poverty, there is often a lot of cruelty and child neglect and dysfunction, poor relationships, poverty of relationships. So the people, whether it's a friendship relationship or a family relationship or a romantic relationship, is often troubled, and there's often, all kinds of social issues come into the picture. So, but the soul poverty was something that struck me, is that it wasn't just their bodies, and their purses that were poor and unwell and undernourished. It was their souls were undernourished. And it made me think that actually we need to, when we talk about health and, holistic health and being well and all this kind of thing, we need to feed our souls, don't we? We need to feed our souls. And I guess a bit like, yeah, I suppose it's very, very like food, physical food. There's healthy, delicious, well prepared, beautifully served food, and there's junk food. And I think when there's this kind of soul poverty, people are feeding on, often they're feeding physically on junk food, but they're feeding on junk soul food as well, which is like the drugs, the gangs, the crime, and probably not exposing themselves to the things that nourish the soul. Now, I said that, beauty in nature, things like animals, are one of the things that nourish my soul. Now, of course, everybody's different, not what nourishes my soul wouldn't necessarily nourish everybody else's soul. But I think there's a lot of crossover and a lot of similarity between what feeds us. I think compassion and kindness, good real friendships, not where there's manipulation and crazy nonsense going on, but good friendships and good relationships. I think definitely access to beauty in nature. Now, interestingly, there is access to beauty in Devonport, and you can look across to Cornwall. You've got the water, you've got all those kinds of things there, but you've also got the ugliness, and it's like ugliness is junk food, isn't it? I think an ugly environment is like poison for the soul. I really think it is. Architecture and town planning and how things are is so important. But what else feeds the soul? So art feeds the soul. But I think there's, again, there's things that that don't. I mean, I haven't watched television for years and years, but I remember I was living with somebody that used to like to watch EastEnders, and I used to kind of endure it and probably do something else, while it was on, but be aware of it. And it was so depressing. And all the characters were, it's based on drama, social drama between people. And drama between people is always unhealthy, It's the opposite, harmony. Harmony and, kindness and compassion, they're all the positives of relationships. But they don't make for good storylines in soap operas. So, and some soap operas are more positive than others. Some have a lot of humour in, some have, some are more bleak and gritty. But I think, for me, EastEnders, certainly at the time, that was junk food for the soul. Kind of might make you feel, might give you something, some payoff from that drama and that social turmoil that you're kind of watching vicariously. But actually, like junk food, it's not going to do you any good in the long term. And yeah, things like exposure to art. And when I say art, I mean all the arts. Film, good television, poetry, painting, drawing, dancing, singing, all those kinds of things. They can really feed your soul. And I think people were having a lot of junk food in terms of that. Now, this is a tangent, probably to end on, is that if we're talking about soul food, what about mind food? Okay, so intellectual stimulation, learning, knowledge, stimulating the brain and the mind. Isn't it weird how we're in a time where there's never been so much information and easy education available? People in many ways have never been so ignorant and misled. So I'm going to end on that. I hope you've enjoyed that, found it inspiring. I hope you go out and find some soul food for yourself. Tell me what your soul food is. And if you're not getting soul food, please do it. You deserve it. You're not a pig. You're not rubbish. You don't deserve to be fed on rubbish in any sense. You deserve good, nourishing things. Thank you for watching. Rangimarie.